You are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 2020, January 14th. We are here in the future, place where when I was a kid, I thought we would be in flying cars and teleporter, whatever that thing is in Star Trek, where what was it, a teleporter, where you get inside the box and they transport you into another dimension. Or into another place in the area. Well, neither one of those exists. I mean, we do have flying cars, but nobody's using them, if unless you want to count helicopters. But 2020 is here, and it is an exciting year already. We're going to talk about a couple of current events, but welcome everybody and nobody. Going to try to make these a little more regular. It got very, very busy at the end of December. I was actually supposed to do a bunch of these at the end of December, and well, one every day, and I failed on my promise. So I hate to do that, but that's what happened. Now we're 14 days into January, 14 days into the new year, 14 days into the new decade, and we're going to try to do this every day, barring any major issues. 2019 was a crazy year, and I don't really have any notes prepared for the close of 2019, and maybe I'll do that later. But one of the highlights of the year was obviously the impending impeachment and the trials. That was politically the one of the more exciting things that took place for 2019. Even though some people didn't like it, I personally, I mean, I think we have, in terms of the world, we have much bigger fish to fry, things that are a lot more important than that. But got to do what you got to do when it comes to legalities and the way you handle yourself in office. So we'll see how that we'll see how that ends up. I think that they've had a few snafus there on the Democratic side, and the Republicans seem to be really fortified. So again, I don't have any particular leanings on this. I would like to see things carried out appropriately, and I would like to see our leaders do what's best for the country. So if that means that we have to continue with these impeachment proceedings, then so be it. I do think that we should try to do a better job of working together in terms of the political parties. And I think it also would be better to get the will of the people into the conversation more often versus what they're saying the will of the people is. And that would really help move things forward. Anyway, we don't want to talk about politics. I want to talk about something crazy. Somebody needs to send Antonio Brown help. Send the man help. And what I mean by that is whoever his circle is, whoever his confidants are, whoever his best friends are, whoever is advising him, if he's paying lawyers, if he has a sister or a brother or some ex teammates or an ex coach or an uncle, an aunt, a grandmother, father, mother, principal, somebody needs to go and have a conversation. No, multiple conversations. In fact, what should happen is they should put him on a plane and take him to somewhere like Bali and have him do a some sort of a meditation retreat where he doesn't have any human contact or human conversation, and maybe he can relearn how to deal with the world. He Something yesterday that was released on the news. The mother of his children. I guess he has some agreement where she's supposed to pick up his kids to go to school. That's what was what I picked up from the video that I watched. And I watched a couple of videos. One was like 2 hours, no, 2 minutes and 40 something. And um, what's the TMZ released a video as well. But anyway, I just I don't get it. I don't understand what, uh, th- I looked at his earnings. I wanted to see if if he's broke, or if he has, if there's like some serious stressors that are taking place. He looked like he was living in a very nice home in Florida, which I didn't know he lived in Florida, or he had a home in Florida. You know, a lot of celebrities and people that have money do have homes in Florida. Florida is not particularly. I mean, there are some expensive areas, but if you compare it to let's say Beverly Hills, there are $50 million mansions. Don't get me wrong, in Florida, or more. In fact, I think the most expensive house on the market, maybe 10 years ago, uh, was in Florida. I think it was $110 million on the market, and this was before we had really $100 million houses. There are multiple $100 million houses now, around the world, and on the market. But anyway, um, Florida is a place where you can actually buy homes at a reasonable price. Now, I don't think the neighborhood that Antonio Brown lives in has reasonable prices. It may. It seemed like a pretty nice neighborhood, and his home seemed like it was pretty expensive. So he may be doing okay. But um, from a communication perspective, if you remember some tweets that he put out months ago when he was dealing with that issue, um, uh, with the NFL and with the girl, or the girls. But anyway, so Antonio Brown kicks the mother of his children out of his house and accuses her of stealing a car, or trying to steal a car. And I guess he's the one who called the police. So the police show up, and he, at this point, starts to basically berate the police, berate the mother, use profanity in front of his children, berate the children's mother in front of the children. These are his kids, I suppose. They look like, well, they were mixed race kids, and they look like they were single digits, probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 years old, 7 years old. I don't know exactly how old they were. I think there were 3 or 4 kids, and at one point he told one of the kids that he loved them, but I don't know if that's the appropriate example to berate a kid's mother, in front of her, and use foul language, and basically call her all sorts of names. I mean, it's sad. You could say it's disgusting. And somebody needs to help this guy out. So somebody that's famous, maybe he looks up to them. Somebody like Will Smith, or um, even Charlemagne, would be great to have a conversation with him. I wish he would. He needs somebody. It's really pathetic. So if you get a chance to check out that video, and you know him, please check out the video and then go help the man, because he's in a bad place. He does not understand how to conduct himself as an adult, and I don't usually have this much about people's this much opinion about people's behavior. But you know, first of all, uh, he broadcasted it on Instagram or Facebook Live. I think it was Instagram Live, if I remember what the feed looked like. So I don't know if that's because he wanted to document the incident, but I would think that if you want to document the incident, you would just record it, uh, pull up the video camera on your phone, and make record the video. But of course, he berated everybody on Instagram Live, and it was sad to see. One of his kids looked at him, and he was like, "I love you, Poppy, or son, or whatever." Um, but anyway, sad. Please, somebody help him out. Next issue is, well, not issue, but there's something interesting. So we have an election coming up this year, at the end of the year, and one of the Swiss banks, the banks in Switzerland, decided to have an ability for you to bet on the election. And what they did was they basically, I think they created a fund or two funds, and one fund is a Democratic fund, and the other fund is it's like a almost like a what do you call those things where rich only the richest of the rich can invest in? A hedge fund. So it's like I think it's like a hedge fund or something like that, and it has a compilation of of companies from the United States that are attached to so in one bucket there is, let's say, Ford, and in fact I'm going to look up what the companies were if I can find it. I saved it here somewhere. Okay, so there's a Democratic victory bucket, we'll call it, and a Republican victory bucket. And so some of the companies, which I read the article and they didn't. I don't remember. Maybe I didn't read the whole article because I don't know why they chose these companies for each particular side. But basically, the Democratic Victory Note, they're calling it a note, is tied to Ford, Home Depot, and Walmart, among other companies. And then the Republican Victory Note is tied to tech and finance stocks. So those including Amazon, Facebook, and Visa. So and also you have the ability to invest up to $40 million. So if you have $40 million, they're calling instead of buckets, they're calling them baskets, and they're tied to. So the firm is offering up to $40 million worth of notes tied to two baskets of American stocks. And again, the Democratic basket is Ford, Home Depot, and Walmart, among other companies, and the major companies in the Republican Victory basket are Amazon, Facebook, and Visa. So I thought that was interesting. Now it's pretty clear that plenty of people with significant amounts of money um, have from America have money in Swiss banks. So I don't know if they're making fun of us or if there's just so much money out there for people to play around with that they're offering this. So or maybe it's just kind of a populist play or a play to get some notoriety for this particular bank. If those of you didn't notice, we had a a stock the Dow Jones. We had a stock rally the other day. The Dow Jones this was last week. Reached a record high of 29,000. And I think actually since I've been doing this little podcast here, we've had I think we had a record before. I don't remember if it was 28,000. I think it may have been 28,000. And I also remember one of the records. Well, actually, I don't remember if how far. I think we've rallied from 18,000 to 28,000, if I remember. I don't know if we ever actually reached 20,000 with Obama in office. I feel like we did not. I feel like they held off on that until they got a new president. So we've gone from maybe 18,000 as a record to now 28,000. So that's quite a significant increase in value of the stock market. So America seems to be booming. Um, so I'm not sure if it's time to invest in stock. As I told some people when it was around 26,000. So what are so the chances of it going up another 10%? It could be 50%, but the chances of it going up another 50% would probably be around 1%. So what does that mean for your money? Should you keep your money in the market or should you be wary? I think uh, I think it probably depends on a number of factors. So, But if you're a long-term investor, obviously leave your money in the market. Now, another big news this weekend is, as you know, I'm a fight fan. I have started to I've gotten into um, I've been a boxing fan for most of my life, and maybe I don't know 7 years ago I started watching the MMA, um, and the UFC, I should say, and other companies, but mostly UFC. But anyway, Conor McGregor has returned, and he is going to be fighting at 170 against Donald Cerrone, or Cowboy Cerrone. And Cowboy Cerrone is definitely somebody who is a formidable opponent, and also a star in the sport. Everybody wants to fight Conor McGregor because the paycheck is going to be so significant compared to anything else you've had before. The thing I would say about Cerrone is this going to be he's definitely in the or on the decline, or in a decline. Donald Cerrone is, and I hate to say that about him because I was rooting for him in his last fight, but last couple of fights. He had a great fight against a young kid who talked a lot of trash and basically called him an old man. And I think he's younger than me, but I mean, in combat sports, it's definitely younger than me, but I don't know how much younger. We should probably look that up. But so anyway, this kid talked a lot of trash to him, and that what does it say? And that kind of fired me up with with that fight because I just thought it was inappropriate to go down that road. I mean, I get it. I mean, you called a man an old man a couple times. That's funny, but it became downright disrespectful. And not that the trash talking game has to be respectful. It doesn't. But sometimes you could figure out other ways to talk your trash. But anyway, so I was kind of invested in that fight. I wish I knew who he fought, but it was I think it was a Latin dude, and he ended up kicking that guy's ass pretty well. So I enjoyed that. In fact, I think he gave him a head kick and knocked him out. So he's much younger than I am. He's 36 years old, born in 1983. But I think fighters enter their prime around 33, and so after you reach your prime, so we'll call that a peak. So he peaked at 33, so he's definitely on the decline from peak, but not a significant amount of years after peak. So hopefully the fella can perform well this week. But I'm not sure. It's a tough fight to. I think that the electricity, the excitement, and the overall just interest in the will of man makes the will of man to, let's say, rise from the fall, and the large fall that Conor McGregor had. I think people can get behind him because they want to see if a person can pick themselves up from such a defeat in a public forum, and uh, be victorious again. So you're going to have a lot of, obviously there's diehard. I'm sure all of Ireland is behind Connor, and as they should be. And there are quite a few Americans that are backing Conor McGregor as well. I'm not sure how many. I think Cerrone lives in Texas or somewhere. Where was he born? He was born in actually he was born in Colorado Springs. That's kind of shocking to me. Although there's a lot of cowboy stuff going on up in Colorado Springs, so maybe not so shocking. But I think he either has a ranch in Arizona or Texas. I feel like it's Texas. He's a beer drinking, gun toting type fella. You can do that in Colorado too, but Texas is definitely a lot more renowned for its at least gun toting. But I would say so. I like to. I'll probably do another podcast just specifically on this, but I'll make my. Well, I won't make my prediction. I'll just tell you what I feel about the two, and you can probably um, assess how I feel, who I feel the winner will be. Although I right now I can't really pick a winner, but I would just say that Cerrone is definitely on the decline. He was beat up pretty bad, I think, in definitely in well one of the last two fights. And sometimes in fighters, you can see the spirit being broken right there on the mat in the ring. And I kind of, I think that Cerrone was expecting to be more dominant in his last two fights, and that didn't happen for him. And I think he wanted to see his star rise a little bit higher than it did, with the expectation that he was going to be, let's say, the face of that particular weight class, and it didn't happen for him. And so, with that comes the disappointment. But he talked himself into a fight with Connor, and so it's going to be a good fight for sure, because he's a pretty tough guy. I think I don't remember if he's one of the people who fades in energy, but he in one of the fights, one of the last two fights, he did seem like he. See, this is what I mean by the spirit being broken. I feel like I saw him fade a bit in one of those fights after the second or third round, and this is something that Connor has done more recently, and I don't know if it's because of extracurricular activities outside the ring. Some people say he's doing things like drinking too much and doing a little nose candy. I don't know if that's true or not, but so those are going to be factors. I mean, Connor's a super wealthy person now. Apparently, his whiskey brand is doing really well, and having a whole country behind him, he definitely doesn't have to work anymore. But maybe he has some interest in legacy and some interest in increasing his empire. I was listening to a video. It said that well, Connor said that he was going to make somewhere around $80 million for this fight. So not a bad payday, and hard to walk away from the ability to make $80 million. So uh, he's he has to win this fight though, because if he doesn't win this fight, Connor, that is, I mean, Cerrone, I think he's done all that he needs to do, because if he beats Connor, everybody's just going to say that Connor was done after the Khabib fight or the Habib fight, and people love him. He's definitely has some diehard fans, but he's not going to be a big draw like Connor would be. And if Connor loses, I think it's over for him. Nobody's going to care, because, in my opinion, I think that Connor did a good job of. I won't say. Well, I will say. I think that he was overhyped. I went back and looked. I didn't watch his previous rise to fame, and I went and watched fights with his fights that kind of gave him a rise. And those fights, I realized he was fighting much smaller guys. So, for instance, right now he doesn't want to cut weight. He normally fights at 155. I don't know. I think he was fighting at 135 in the fights that I watched. So right now I'm about 175, maybe 177. And this is we'll say I was 180 coming off of holiday. I've probably lost 5 pounds since holiday. And if I was to fight right now, I mean, not a UFC fighter, but just a regular person who was, if I lost in water weight, um, 20 pounds, got down to, let's say, 155, and then day of the fight, they increase their weight to 165 and I increase my weight to 175, I'm definitely going to have an advantage. So I think that Connor was actually fighting much smaller guys and did a good job of making it look like well, I mean, he did dominate those guys to a certain extent, and he did beat Diaz, who's a bigger guy. So I can't really take anything from him, but I do feel like there was a bit of extra hype placed on Connor having fought guys that are in a smaller weight class. Although he did make weight, so we'll leave it at that. Again, he needs to win this fight and he needs to win the next fight. If he can win the next two fights, I don't think it would be smart for him to go back and fight Khabib in the fight right after this. I actually don't think that Khabib. Well, again, I think that the there's a reason why that fight with Tony Ferguson is not happening or hasn't happened. I think they've postponed it 4 times. Now I don't know who in terms of the exact amount of who canceled when and like if Khabib canceled twice and Tony canceled twice. But I have a feeling I just don't see maybe I have to look this up before I talk about it. But um I think Connor should actually fight a couple fights before he fights Khabib. And he's talking about fighting Usman. That would be a disaster for him. Because obviously Usman can take a punch and the dude is like a monster compared to Connor in terms of body type. So that would be a silly fight, in my opinion, unless he just wants to get destroyed and carried out on his shield. So we'll talk again about who I think is going to win the fight, but we know it's a must win for Conor McGregor. And Cerrone, good for you, buddy. You got a payday. Although I heard you, I read you come from a well-to-do family anyway, so it's not like you needed the money, but maybe you wanted your own money. The other fight that is coming up is the Tyson Fury or Wilder Fury fight, and I can't wait for that one. That is gonna be amazing. It's gonna be in Vegas on February 22nd, and I am going to, since it's in Vegas, I'm going to see if there's no. Anyway, that's going to be a great fight. Sign up for it. We'll talk again about predictions for that fight, but it's a tough one. I'll just say if Fury can dance around, he's got good chances. Um, but if Wilder has improved at all in his defense and his boxing ability, then Fury's going to have a tough time. But either way, it's probably going to be a replica of the original fight. Um, and as far as the outcome is concerned, some people said Fury won the fight. I mean, yes, maybe on points. I mean, I think that's what happens in all of Wilder's fights because he's just waiting to knock you out, and that's what the sport is all about anyway. Especially at the heavyweight division, if you can knock somebody out with one punch, um, you just wait until it happens. It's hard. It's hard to avoid one punch, or it's hard to not get punched in a whole boxing match. So it's going to be an interesting fight to see. But I tell you what, Fury didn't take that fight right off because he knew that it was likely that he was going to lose the fight, and then his star would have been over. Nobody would have cared anymore. At least he wouldn't have been able to get as much of a money grab for um, definitely for this fight, but any of the other fights that he had in the interim. So those two fights are crazy, crazy, crazy. Now, I watched a football game last night that I don't know. I won't say it was the best. Well, I will say that, and then I'll go back and say it wasn't. But It was the best college football game that I've ever watched in my life. And let me tell you why. The amount of, well, the amount of intensity, no, not intensity, that's not complexity that that is now taking place at the college level. Like these guys are playing like professionals, especially the I mean, I won't just give all the glory to the quarterbacks, even though they both did a great job. Don't get me wrong, and they're playing at the pro level too. And that's what I was going to say, that the quarterbacks are playing at such a high level that it is going to be interesting to see what the NFL looks like in 5 years or 2 years. Actually, 2 years, 3 years, 2 to 3 years, because we have quarterbacks now that are reading defenses and changing plays and 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 uh, kind of doing things in the moment that are working, that we haven't seen this before, that I can remember, and definitely we haven't seen the in offense and the complexities on offense and defense in terms of making adjustments and strategy. I haven't seen this before, I don't think. And I mean, it was reminiscent of any professional game um, played. It was like watching the NFL, but it with players that were playing their hearts out, which is you know, typically something that happens at the college level, whereas sometimes with professionals, sort of like what's happened with the running back for the Dallas Cowboys. It's hard to get out of bed and run and work hard when you got $15 million that even if you don't ever play again, that money's sitting in the bank and you can do whatever you want to do. And that's a factor. And that's a factor actually that Conor McGregor has to deal with. Cerrone probably wants to get that 15 million. He may have a couple of million in the bank, but it's nice to see double digits in the bank account. So so these that this game was so good, and it was good from beginning to end. Maybe the last 10 minutes, so maybe the fourth quarter, you knew. Actually, I think even in the fourth quarter, there was still a chance at the beginning of the fourth quarter. But the last 9 or 10 minutes, you knew that the game was over. Like there was no way that Clemson was going to come back. But the mental fortitude of the quarterbacks, the first they rattled the LSU quarterback Burrows in the beginning. They had a great strategy of not something that he couldn't read. He couldn't read whether or not they were going to blitz or not, and they blitzed a few times and put him under pressure and had him he was kind of tweaky a little bit. He was having difficulty dealing with the pressure and making decisions under that high level of pressure. And then um, he sat down after two exchanges. They had to punt the ball a couple times, and you could see him talking to the guys up at the up in the booth through the headphones. And they made some minor adjustments, and both teams did, and they seemed. I can't remember who struck. Oh, actually, I think LSU was down by 10 points. No, I may be conflating. I don't remember because there had another couple games that were great were the NFL games where the Chiefs and the was it the Titans? The hell did the Chiefs play? I don't remember. Anyway, they played somebody and kicked their ass. But great games. These are the NFL has well, let's go back to the college before we jump to the NFL. The college games are great, and I've never seen a game played with such complexity and um, uh, facility. And what's the other word? I can't think of exactly how to describe it, but they just did a good job of really l- sticking to the strategy and ensuring that the strategy was implemented on both sides. And it was just a matter of time. One mistake was made on the other side, and and LSU took advantage of it, and then they shifted the momentum, and that was it. A great game. Even if you could go back and watch it, it would be great to see again because you can see two master coaches ultimately, and also uh, t- two quarterbacks that have mastered the position at the college level. The other thing I would like to give a shout out to is the LSU defense. They just never can. And I'm not taking anything away from Clemson, but LSU defense just kept coming and kept coming, and it seemed like they never got tired, and they wanted that quarterback. They wanted to make sure that he never got a breather, and I think they broke him. So, but he'll be fine. I mean, I don't think he's lost a game in 2 years or something crazy like that, 700 and something days. So he'll figure it out. People love him, but great game. Now on to the professional games. I will just I'll just say this: the um, I'll just jump out here and make a prediction, and then I'll make another video for the purpose of specifying who's going to win for that particular sport. But I'll just say this: the Chiefs are going to be hard to beat, and the Packers are going to be hard to beat. So, how does the schedule work out? I don't want to change that. So let's see here. So I think that NFL schedule is. I don't remember what I put in. Dang it! I just put in something earlier that gave me the whole breakdown. NFL. Okay, so the Ravens and the Titans. That was a disappointment. I actually wanted the Ravens to win because I had an interest in seeing Lamar Jackson playing Super Bowl because that was going to be an epic performance. Unfortunately, they figured him out. So, excuse me. So that was sad for lots of people. And then the Chiefs against the Texans, man, again, strategy. Texans came out, they had a strategy, they figured out how to rattle the Chiefs a bit in the beginning. I think they were winning. That's what this is the game I was conflating with the Clemson LSU game. But Texans come out. I think they were 3 touchdowns ahead, something like that, 21 or 24 points ahead. And then the Chiefs come back, man. They come back. Uh, and I think they did it all in the second quarter. I think they scored four touchdowns or 5 something crazy like that in the second quarter. So they turned the game around in one quarter, which is kind of funny because the Texans had kind of what they thought they had put the game away in the first quarter. Now I was at someone's house to watch the Seahawks and the Packers, and it's so interesting when you go to people's houses to watch the game, but you don't get to watch the game because usually people that invite you over to watch the game actually don't want to watch the game. So I didn't get to see the game very much. I did get to see the Seahawks lose, which was sad. Though I am a fan of the Packers quarterback, and I think that him it's funny I can't remember his name, but I can remember his girlfriend's name. But I don't. He's going to be hard to beat for two reasons. First of all, he's in the he's in the twilight of his career, and so he's got something to prove, and he's got something that he wants. Again, he wants to go out. I'm sure he wants to go out a winner. I don't think that he's going to quit. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not. I don't think he's going to retire. But you only get these opportunities to go to Super Bowl. Um, they're few and far between. So I think that he he's going to be hard to beat because again, twilight of his career, got has something to prove, and then he has another. If you've ever followed Danica Patrick on Instagram, the woman is a how do you say? She is um a monster. She's relentless. She does all kinds of crazy stuff. But she does it with such intensity, and I think that kind of when you're there's hard when you're a professional athlete, you're hardly ever around people outside of your peer groups. Let's say if you're a professional football player, you may have friends in other sports, but not many people that you spend a lot of time with that have understand the intensity level necessary to play at the level that you play at. And I think that him dating, being in a significant relationship with somebody like her is a huge support for him in terms of his mentality and what he recognizes is necessary to get him to the next level. So that is going to be tough to beat. Now, so my prediction is that the Packers will actually beat the 49ers. Though the 49ers have done well this year, they always look a little bit off to me. And it's not like I've watched every game, but the couple games that I have watched, they just don't look as dynamic as I would expect the team to look to get to the final round. Now they've been dynamic and they've done enough to get themselves to a position of you know the game before the final game. So kudos to them, and they're definitely good enough to get there. So, but my prediction is that the Packers go forward and the Chiefs will dismantle the Titans. Now, people have said Mahomes doesn't look as dominant as he's looked in the past, or as he did last year, or whenever. But I think he's actually starting to feel more. He's dealt with the ebb and flow of being in a position, the leadership position and the most vocal position on the team. Not that he hasn't dealt with that before, but at this level, sometimes when you get in there and people are as fast as you and as mentally quick as you are, and they want to rip your head off. Uh, it's hard to deal with the lows of your sport, or of a particular game or a particular instance, and you have to learn how to deal with that. Learn how to deal mentally, how to get yourself out of that the headspace of thinking about, let's say, whatever mistake you just made, or um, whether or not they figured out your offense. And I think he's figured out how to deal with that, and it's helped him be more comfortable in these higher pressure positions. So I think that Mahomes has figured something out, and I think they're definitely going to beat the Titans, and I think it's going to be the Super Bowl is going to be the Chiefs and the Packers. So we shall see. Now, after watching the game, after watching these two games, then we'll go back and we'll talk about. So the games, FYI, are on Sunday at 12:05 and 3:40. So at least we get to see both games in the same day, and we'll know who's going to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is going to be on February 2nd. Get a couple weeks off, and probably going to be the Chiefs and the Packers. And man, it's going to be a hard one to pick because you got a guy again that is it's he's going to have to a guy that's trying to figure out how to end his career, and another guy who's starting his career. So interesting dynamic. Um, I could go. I think I will. I mean, we've been going for quite a bit of time. So that's it for football and boxing. There's some other boxing to talk about, but we'll talk about that later. Some interesting events that happened in the last couple days. So the Dodgers lost the World Series in 2017. Damn, I can't remember who they lost to. Come on, man. Get your mind right, man. 2017 World Series. Astros. I don't know why I don't remember that. So the Astros basically cheated. And so that's probably why I don't remember because um, they don't matter anymore in my eyes. They cheated. And, I think about that series and I think about what the coach of the Dodgers had to endure from the fans on Twitter, assholes, and the people in the press and the media, assholes. And, you know, the guy has been doing a great job, and people are so quick to want to have people fired. Uh, anyway, the point is that he had to endure and deal with all that nonsense, and these jerks over at the Astros were cheating. And I'm sure that all the freaking teams are cheating, just like Belichick's probably cheated his whole career. And I mean, I guess that's just a part of. I mean, it is the American way. Let's be realistic. But anyway, so I mean, what do you do? So they suspended they fined the team $5 million, which is nothing, and then they suspended the coaches, which I think they probably, in my opinion, well, I mean, they let Belichick get. I mean, you have to. I guess you have to look at precedents. So they didn't get rid of Belichick. So I guess cheating is not fatal to your coaching position. Maybe because everybody's doing it. I don't know, but I mean, if you cheat in a World Series and you win the World Series after cheating, how do you deal with that? That's so ridiculous, especially in a position where well, I mean, all these guys are millionaires, so I can't. Well, not all of them, but a lot of these guys are millionaires, so I can't feel sorry for them because they all got their paychecks, regardless of whether or not they won or not. But anyway, it's just it's people should be so mad about this. It's not right. So they were stealing signs, basically. Well, I mean, I don't have to tell you what it is, but pitchers, pick their pitches and they pick their pitches by reading the signs of the what do you call it, the catcher, and so they were using some kind of technology. I didn't look into the whole thing, but they probably were using like video cameras or something, high zoom lenses or something to see the signs, and then relaying the pitch to the batter, and the batter knew exactly what pitch was happening, and he was able to set up for the pitch. Now, God knows if I was at the plate and somebody told me what the pitch was going to be, I'm not going to hit it. But these guys are so damn good that you can just tell them what the pitch is going to be, and then they can take advantage of that, which I guess at that level makes sense. But that's incredible. I mean, these guys are like machines. So, I mean, I'm sure that there's a bunch of decision making taken out of it by just understanding exactly what pitch is coming and setting yourself up in position for that. So, anyway, Dodgers lose the Super Bowl to cheaters, and that's sad. Being from Los Angeles, I do remember that World Series, and I do remember the sadness, and I do remember all of the haters against the Dodgers manager. And the guy got him to the World Series again after that. So I don't remember if they went for 18, but they definitely went last year. Now, the biggest news that has happened is things are moving so fast. I don't remember if this happened last year or this year, but we had a little bit of a conflict with Iran, and Iran ended up shooting down an airplane, which I have to do some more research on that because there was an airplane that was lost um, in the Indian Ocean. That there's some fishy things about the loss of that particular aircraft. So we have to do some more research on who was on this plane and like specifically because they'll get rid of 200 people just to kill one person. So I don't know what the details about that or if it was just a mistake. But apparently, some people were arrested today in Iran for making that mistake in their army. So this is what happens when nations have conflicts. And I have a good friend that he doesn't live in Iran, but he's from there. And when you have that's part of the one of the issues that we have here in America is we don't spend enough time dealing with people that are not like us. And so we have this idea that those people are not people, and they are people, and they're people just like you that like to go to restaurants and like to have a good time with friends and like to talk and play sports, and they love their family and their mothers and their kids, and people love them. And so when these kinds of things happen, it's sad because people died. So anyway, um, we bombed. I think his name is Soleimani or whatever his name is. He was a Iranian uh, general who had it out for the United States, and we decided to take him out. And as a result, there was supposedly going to be a World War III. I watched I watched a news broadcast from another country, and something seemed odd about the retaliation from Iran, just in the the videos that we were shown on the news. So I would just say that something seemed odd about, well, first of all, we're in the age of technology, age of information, the technology age, and everybody has video cameras on at all times, even early in the morning. And so the video footage that we got of the retaliation missiles was a little bit weird. Um, I thought they could have done a better job. Well, I thought there should have been some other coverage, but there wasn't. So that was the first thing that kind of made me do some more investigating. And I'll just say this: I don't want to get into. I am a conspiracy theorist. I will let you know that right now, but I'm not going to talk about those things just yet. So I do a lot of research to understand what's happening. And now, and I talked about this before in another post, um, before the internet was a place where it wasn't muddled with confusion and BS and content that uh, directly opposed um, itself. So, in other words, you could have, a person, something happen, and then it's two sides of the story, and the one side refutes or completely refutes the other side. It's like if a man walks into a store and picks up three apples and takes them out of the store, and somebody saw him do it, and the man himself knew that he did it, then that's what happened. But the way it's working now is if the man doesn't tell you that he did it, and if there's two people that saw the man steal the apples, but one decides that the man didn't steal the apples and he decides to tell a different story, then those two stories are put on the internet as facts. And so now people have to figure out like what fact is actually true. That the internet wasn't like that before 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. And so that's on purpose. So I'm saying that to say to all the people out there researching things that or listening to things that are being delivered in the news, that you need to go and have multiple sources. And what I mean by multiple sources, you need to look at a bunch of different content on specific things, especially events like this that are really important, and determine from those sources. You need to look at both sides. You need to look at the side that says uh, it's his fault. You need to look at the side that says it's his fault, and then you need to look at another side that says it's his fault and it's his fault, and uh, understand where both sides are coming from and why they have that perspective, and then draw your own conclusions from your research. You're hardly ever now going to be able to determine what is exactly true, and and so you're going to need a lot of information to, I will say, do create the building blocks to truth without getting um, without getting the actual fact, because uh, unless you're the guy who took the apples, you don't have the facts. And sort of like what happened in the OJ trial, which I think I mentioned before. So anyway, I will just say this about Iran: things are not what they seem, and we're not going into World War III, at least not over Iran or that particular event. That's not happening. Um, so need not to worry, and you should not have worried in the first place. And that's the sad part. Whole internet was blowing up over, this president's going to start World War III, and people got all frazzled and freaked out. Well, at least the stock market held on, because normally when somebody announces World War III, things get real bad. But anyway, do your research, do a little more digging, a little more studying, and try to understand what's really going on. I'm actually going to. Uh, I need to take notes for that particular subject, and I will have to decide if I want to actually put that information out or not. Um, the podcasting uh, platforms and YouTube have started to get really weird about content in the last 12 months. Um, there used to be a time where you could pretty much put whatever you wanted up, especially if it was the truth. But now that's not the case. So since I'm just starting, I'm not sure I want to start off with something so controversial, but I might. Do your research. Deaths are rising in the United States between the ages of 45 and 64. I fit into that category. Deaths are rising in the United States between the ages of 45 and 64. In the area of cardiovascular, in the department of the so people dying of cardiovascular problems are dying at a higher rate than ever before between the ages of 45 and 64. And they don't know why. In one area in Colorado, it's one of the peak areas, I think, in Colorado Springs. Don't hold me to that, but Colorado is having an increase in deaths um, in, again, 45 to 64. So nobody is the I don't remember the studies actually saying why. They don't know why, but it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple why. I mean, it has to do with the food, obviously, and obviously the food is getting worse and worse, and even people that think they're eating healthy are not eating healthy. So I went vegan a couple years ago. Well, 10 years ago I went vegan, and then a couple years ago I went vegan. And so in other words, I was vegan for, I think, first time 6 months, and then even the second time 6 months. And after 6 months, it starts to be a little bit difficult because there are some nutrients that you're not getting, and you start to show signs of. So I wasn't ready to do that fully, um, until I can figure out how to get a complete diet. But anyway, I think people are dying because the food is real bad, and we cannot continue to feed people beef that's um, corn fed. Well, actually, everything. All essentially all we're eating is corn, and corn is unnatural. Although I eat corn, I eat popcorn. It's not a natural thing. If you go and look up the history of corn, it's not something that occurred before. It was something I think that was made by the American Indians. And so not only what did they make it, and it wasn't something that naturally occurred in the form that we have it today, but we have gone and changed it into something entirely different by genetically modifying it. And I think our bodies just can't deal with it. Now, I'm not saying that corn is the problem. I don't know, but I am saying that when a cow eats what it's supposed to eat versus eating only corn, and if you look at the nutrient um, complexity of corn versus the nutrient complexity of let's say um, grass, there's going to be a big difference in the amount of nutrients that a cow gets from eating um, those two things. So when you eat meat, you get the nutrients that the animal that you're eating ate. And if you're eating meat that doesn't have any nutrients, um, then your body doesn't have the ability to ward off diseases. Now, the other problem is animals are fatter than they would normally be. So, you got it's probably more than twofold problem, but you got the problem of too much fat in and it's not the right type of fat. So if you eat grass and you get fat, it's going to and if you eat corn and get fat. And I mean, there's a whole that's a whole other conversation regarding omega 3s, omega 6, and omega 9s. But for the sake of just keeping it simple, there's just a difference. And that's probably not the only problem. The other problems would be that there are a bunch of, snack foods and fast foods that people are eating that are not even probably not even really food, and your body doesn't know what to do with it. And I think that's what's killing people. And um, so pay attention to your diets, try to eat better. I've gone for an hour. I could actually talk for another 3 hours. I have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, but uh, I think this is good for today. We'll leave some stuff for the later days. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk again. Adios.